It's not supposed to be like this, is it?
What? This is like the... Well, we had a bit of a break yesterday so you could get the wind generator down, but this is about the 5th day in the row that it's been raining all day.
It has. Welcome to the tropics.
So do you think the carburetor's blocked again?
Yeah, it's one of the drawbacks with a integral fuel tank. Even though I've put a filter in it, like sometimes you'll just get bits of stuff in there. So there's an inline filter in the actual tank. I've put another inline filter in, but even just the nature of things, even a small blob of water will act as a particle to block it. So where would small particles of water come from? That's the additional inline filter I put in, but even still, I mean, a bit of water can get in there, and so we're going to clear that. I'm just going to pull it off, get the carby out, clear it, and we'll be good. It's probably worth pointing out that if you are going to go cruising around, it is worth knowing how to clean a carburetor. That's one of the most vulnerable parts on an outboard engine, I guess, is the carby, particularly on a two-stroke, with these little engines anyway. Learning how to do your carburetor, they're the tools you need. Alright, and they come with the engine. Yep, right there. That there, the discoloration is water.
Oh.
Which one's in? Out? In.
So you emptied the filter?
Yeah, we just emptied out that filter, got rid of the water. There wasn't too much, there wasn't too many small particle contaminants in there. So now I'm just going to take out the float bowl. So a carburetor has some similarities with your toilet. Okay, it's if you've ever taken the top off a toilet, and who hasn't, you'll see that when you flush it, a little float goes down, and as it goes down, it opens up a valve and water will come rushing up. The same thing happens in a carburetor. So we've got a little bowl down here and it contains fuel, and as the fuel level drops, as it gets sucked into the engine and burnt, a little float goes down and allows more fuel to come in. So we're going to have to take that off. It is 4 screws. It's probably a good idea not to lose these screws.
Do you want a little bowl for them?
I have one.
I have one.
This is actually the perfect weather to be showing this, because this is when you'll be doing it. Look here.
Oh, sponge.
So we've got some water in there. Water and fuel don't mix. Okay. So we've had some water in here, and there are some little tiny particle, and that's enough to cause you some problems, sadly. So what we're looking at here is the fuel bowl. This is where the fuel is stored. This is actually a little fuel pump. That's what that thing is. Under here. Now I mentioned the float, like in your toilet, and that's it there. So when it goes boop, like that, it lets fuel in. There's a little valve up in there, and as the fuel rises, it comes back up and shuts that valve off. Boop. So that there's the valve up in there. So as this rises up, it's pushing a valve against a seat, and so when it does that, the valve comes up, and when it falls down, the valve comes like this, and fuel is free to flow in. This here is the main jet, and this is where fuel goes up when you accelerate, And in here, in this one, and don't lose this. This little plug is important. It has to go back on there when you're finished. The idle jet is up in there. Incidentally, with a 2-stroke, this just goes all the way up until it stops. There's no setting on this. Screw that out. So this is our main jet. So I've pulled out the main jet, as you saw, and it's just this little bit of brass, but it has a hole through the center of it. Okay? It's very important that hole remains open, and it's very important that hole remains the same size. So if you ever pull this out and you want to clean it, don't go jamming anything metal in there to clear it. I've just got a bit of a toothpick here, and I'm just very gently just making sure that nothing's in there. I'm not jamming it in the hole, just flicking at anything. Blow a bit of air through it. You can also get some WD-40 or RP7 or whatever you like, and just really hose it down, wash it out in a bit of fuel, and that's pretty good. When you put it back, you've got like a fairly soft metal face there, so when we screw it back in, just go gently, go it up till it stops, and then just nip it up. How this works is airflow goes across the top in the carburetor. As the engine's working hard, it's sucking air in just like you would if you were running hard. As the air goes across the top of this, it creates a venturi, a vacuum in here, and that sucks fuel up through that jet and into the engine. And it's all been finely balanced, the engine, the amount of airflow and everything, with how much fuel can get sucked through that little hole. So it's really important that that hole is that size. So it won't be that size if it gets blocked, and it won't be that size if you go ramming bits of metal wire in there. So don't do that. Okay, next I'm just going to take out that idle jet. Remember, there's 2 jets. So that main jet is when you're accelerating hard, the fuel's going through there and into the engine. And that's what we had a problem with. I know that because it was conking out, and I had to pull the choke a little bit to keep us going. And what that did is it created more of a vacuum across the top of the venturi, and it made a richer fuel mix. It just kept us going to get back to the boat. She doesn't have an idle problem. I'm just going to get that idle jet out and have a look at it anyway, because I've got the float bowl on. Now this is the idle jet, and it's the one that I pulled out of that little tube, and this goes in after it. So that's when the engine's idling. It's only just pop, 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 just waiting for you to do something. The fuel is being drawn by this one. Okay, it's coming up through that tube. We also need to make sure that this isn't blocked. But normally this will be the jet that's blocked if you take your hand off the throttle and the engine just and stops. Then you've got a problem with that. Obviously you want them both unblocked, because when the engine's functioning, this will be contributing to some of the fuel flow. So looking through there against the nice bright white sky, I can see a nice bright white dot in there. On the side of the carburetor, you have this little screw, and that's called the idle mixture screw. This screw here, this is the throttle mechanism, and as you push that down, that just says how fast the boat's going to idle. Alright, but it's just the same as you're grabbing the throttle, and like that. It's just a stop. That idle mixture screw, that says how rich the fuel is, how much, or what the ratio to air to fuel is. How it does that, because this is just a jet with no moving parts, what this does is controls the amount of air that's going over this jet. Alright, this doesn't actually control the fuel directly. This controls air going past the jets, and that. But this is a very important one. Like, you don't touch this too much, and if you do want to muck around with it, to try and adjust this, always count the number of turns. So if it doesn't go well, you can always put it back the same number of turns. Alright, half a turn, 1 turn, 1.5, 2, and then if it doesn't work out, you can always count your way back to a good setting from the factory. Alright, so both jets are now clear. I can see daylight through them. The main jet was blocked, it's contaminated. But rather than telling you exactly how that's done, because most outboards are different, although they go along similar principles, that should show you that it's not actually that hard to clean a carby jet. And I really encourage you, if you're going to go cruising, you really should know how to clean your carby, because it will get blocked. Okay, and then it can either be an embarrassment that your engine won't start when it's full of groceries on the boat ramp, or it could be much worse, like if you're like us and you're stuck up some crocodile infested creek and you're rowing back at dark. You don't want to do that. So if you don't already know how to, I would encourage you to get a hold of your outboard and just, if nothing else, pop that float thing off and just see, can I see a main jet, can I see an idle jet? Remember, in these little Yamahas, the idle jet will be under this little rubber plug. So now all that remains is to just put everything back together, and that's just an exact reverse of how we took it off. All of these things are made out of soft alloys and brasses, so you really want to be careful about how much force you apply. That's why the tools that Yamaha supplies with their engine, this little skinny screwdriver, you can't really get a good hold on it, you know. So, and you know, and this little thing here, you're supposed to just put the handle of the screwdriver through. You can get quite a bit of force on that as well, but it's not like a proper big Sidchrome handle. That's for that reason. All right, good morning. Where are we, Pascal?
We're at Mackay Cafe.
Our favourite here on TI. I think they serve probably one of the best coffees I've had.
Yeah, best coffee in far north Queensland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are we doing today? You might not know it, but in the past here in Thursday Island, the Japanese people had a big part to play in the development of Thursday Island.
Yeah, that's right. They arrived here in 1848 and they came because there was a pearl industry being established here in the Torres Straits.
Yeah, they're really great pearl divers. But further than that, they cooperated with the islanders back then and really made great steps to developing Thursday Island as we see it today. Vehicles and all. So we're going to go and look at the, among other things, Japanese cemetery today. And what else is there? There's the Green Hill Fort.
We're going to go up to the Green Hill Fort and look at the gun emplacements there that were set up in the First World War.
Oh, before.
Before the First World War.
Before that,
yeah.
to protect the sea lanes of Northern Australia.
Yeah.
But anyway, you'll see all that. But if you're coming to Thursday Island, maybe drop in to Mackay. There's not much left of it, but get one of these almond croissants. They're amazing. Don't do it if you're a diabetic, you'll die. And definitely check out their coffee.
It's really delicious.
It's well worth it. The people of Thursday Island are still very active hunting at sea, and a lot of the boats have these platforms where a man up the front can direct the driver.
Every mangrove thicket in Thursday Island has a healthy population of flying foxes or fruit bats.
Thursday Island in the wet season is really beautiful and lush, and we really enjoyed walking around there. Here you can see a type of acacia that lives on the ground, and it's adapted to heavy rainfall, but when it gets contacted, it shuts down. People call it sensitive weed here.
And the introduced cane toad had conquered another bit of Australia.
As you would imagine, back at the turn of the century, diving for pearls was pretty risky business, and a lot of divers, and they were mostly Japanese, lost their lives. In 1979, this monument was erected to commemorate the deaths of those 700 Japanese that gave their lives opening up this region.
Next to the Japanese cemetery, there's the Islander cemetery.
The Torres Strait Islanders are still very much a seafaring people, and they still maintain close links to their past, in particular their tribal totems, as can be seen here by this crocodile.
A year after the funeral, the Islanders celebrate a tombstone opening. The tombstone is kept wrapped until the opening. Family and friends gather around the grave for singing, speeches, and the tombstone blessing by a priest. The tomb is unveiled and gifts are distributed in thanks. Participants then feast and dance. As you walk further up the hill, you find other graves and they date well back into the 1800s. There's just so much history here. In the tropics, any high spot is usually claimed by an osprey, and this cell phone tower was no exception. Next on our tour of the history of Thursday Island was Green Hill Fort. In the 19th century, the Torres Straits was strategically important for world trade. Safe passage and adequate supplies of coal were critical, so there were big coal hulks moored offshore, and they contained that essential fuel. It was just after the Crimean War, and we actually considered a Russian invasion a threat, and for that coal to fall into enemy hands would be an absolute disaster. Since its inception, Green Hill Fort has been an important part of the Australian war effort, and in World War II it was used as a signals and wireless station. Now these massive 6-inch guns were actually installed in 1893, and they were built in the UK and shipped here. Each gun and mount weighs 10 tonnes, and they fired a 45.5 kilo or 100 pound projectile up to 5.25 miles. While earlier cannons were muzzle loaded, with powder and shot being tamped down, these were breech loading guns, so they were quicker and easier to use and fire in battle. How you doing back there, Dar? Look, someone's come here before. There's a track. What?
There's a track here.
Try not to roll my knee or my ankle.
Pascal was just saying this is the stupidest idea ever.
Yeah, it's like grass up to our knees, almost to my waist. Whoa.
It's not like we're in taipan country or anything, is it?
Yeah, we are. So it's time to get in there and clean that mould.
There's nothing more glamorous than yachting, is there?
No.
This is another good time to talk about the second-hand yacht industry. Sometimes, when people are selling a boat, and I'm not sure whether it's the guy that sold it to me or the guy that sold it to him, but instead of cleaning a boat, some people will just paint a boat. So we see that this is it hasn't bonded at all. So we talked about vinegar as our box jellyfish remedy, but vinegar is also very good for disinfecting hospitals in 1950s movies and getting rid of mould, isn't it? So you can wash down surfaces with vinegar, and the acid makes it likely that the spores won't just pop, rehatch when you're not looking. And we've also got clove oil as well. So I know the charter boats in the Whitsundays, they often use clove oil in water, spray it and wipe it down, because in tropical Australia in the summertime, mould is probably your biggest enemy. From an aesthetic point of view anyway, when the crocodiles leave you alone.
Especially after a week of rain.
Especially after a week of rain, everything is quite damp. And now the sun's out, it's damp and warm.
Yeah, we've been wiping every second day and it keeps popping back up. So hopefully with this...
Not with undiluted vinegar.
Yeah.
All right.
Well...
Have you?
You did in the bedroom and it's still mould there.
Yeah, but I missed bits.
You weren't thorough.
Alright. I hunt and put food on the table. I don't wipe mould away. Unless it's like this when it's too nasty to send the beautiful Pascal in. And then I'm drawing the short straw, folks.
Get in there.
Ah,
You love it.
I do love it.
Dark mouldy spaces.
Ah, it's almost like I should be getting paid again.
Oh, I can hear it coming off in big... Oh.
Okay, so...
Suppose we don't have to remove as much mould now.
No, look at that. So this is not bonded at all. And in fact, we can see a bit of mould actually growing on the back of this. So that's a fairly ordinary effort on someone's behalf. It's on this bit, all of this at one stage is going to be cut out, and I'm going to put a whole new floor in there, and then it's going to be done. So we've sort of became aware of this when we were in Darwin, but we had a lot of other things to do, so we didn't prioritise it, because this is where we just put plastic bins of dry goods and our winter clothes. Yes, we do have clothes. But yeah, that unscrupulous is what I'd call that. It's if you're ever selling a boat, just clean it, don't paint it, and just give someone a horrible gift sometime in the future. How's it all going on the mould department, Pascal?
Getting rid of the mould. All the back shelf was getting mouldy, and we pulled out some sheets and they'd gone yellow and mouldy, which is pretty disgusting. So just pulled everything out, and I'm just wiping everything down with straight vinegar. But even things like this, like bags, this is dry, this bag, but it's just growing mould on it.
Yeah, well, especially what'll happen is you'll get humidity inside.
Yeah.
And then you'll get a cold snap when it rains, lots of condensation.
Yeah, that's right.
And then off it goes. So.
But like, yeah, even things like glasses cases have got mould growing on them. Just mould growing on shit, you know. Happy days.
What a whinge.
It wasn't a whinge.
Imagine all the housework you would have had to have done by now.
I don't know if you have to wipe mould off things when you're doing housework.
No, you have to clean a whole house quite regularly.
Yeah, I suppose. Every nook and cranny. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, because it makes YouTube more likely to recommend this video to others. And also, if you're interested in the music that was on this episode, head on down to the description. There's lots of information there for you.